call the meeting to order of the Cultural Heritage Board. May I have a roll call, please?
Member Vigil.
Happy to be here.
Member Vieux.
Here.
Member Nichols. Member Merlo.
Here.
Member Jaurigue. Member Groom.
Here.
Member Corradi.
Present.
Vice Chair Holzer.
Present.
Chair Swanson. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything on the consent calendar? No?
Not tonight.
Okay. Informational items. I guess the first thing we'll talk about is the proposed changes to the ordinance on the municipal code relating to structures of merit.
So, hello,
I don't think they're on.
Vice Chair.
No, they're not on.
Hello? Hello? Testing?
Barely hear you.
Testing?
Not that loud.
Oh, I'll, we have to record though, right?
It will record.
May just not be amplifying.
Okay.
Hot mic.
Vice Chair David Kwong, the Director of the Community Development Department. So let me kind of give you, I think you have the information before you. This is really affecting the structures of merit section of the Development Code. And what I'd like to do is really just kind of give you a summary. There are really four main components being requested for change here. As you just mentioned, this is an informational item before you as a board, but it does specifically affect you as a board, obviously. You've been doing a lot of work, especially right after this board was reconstituted. And sometimes what happens is we dive into reconstituting a board and redoing the work. Staff finds things, and it's not oftentimes we like to find things that we believe are mistakes, but we have found some stuff. And so what happened was, at my direction, and working with all the other departments, including the city attorney's office, we felt there were some necessary changes that are needed to basically address due process. The four components that we're looking at are public noticing, having a public hearing, having an appeals section that's similar or consistent with the other portions of city code or development code, and then finally also doing things similar to what we do with planning commission and city council, as well as other commissions, is to do things with resolutions. So that's our good track record and history of things that happen over the last 10 years or whatnot when the situation arises. So again, those are really the four components. As we dived into a particular situation for a recently approved structure of merit project, this is where we found the situation, particularly regarding public noticing and due process and having appeal, again, is similar to what those other commissions are doing. So again, first of all, I do want to, or not first, but I do want to apologize in which this is how it's come to you, but at my direction to the staff, and with a number of structure of merit applications that will be coming to you as a board in the future very soon, if not already, there are a number of situations that I want to be able to address from a due process standpoint and put the city in a good light and good perspective and position, if you will, so we don't have those problems. It doesn't change, in my view, any of the content in which you review what's the structure of merit, and it doesn't change how you will look at it, evaluate it. What it does change is just providing ample notice and providing opportunity for a public hearing. And again, it allows for an appeal process similar to the other types of decisions. And looking through our development code, I'm not sure there's really any other decisions that any kind of board or commission makes that is not appealable to all the way up to the city council. Frankly, the thing that I did see that's probably not appealable in some cases is if I make a decision or my staff make a decision on my behalf on site plan design review type of decisions, those are not necessarily appealable. But besides that, pretty much all of the other commissions and boards have decision-making authority that's appealable all the way up to the city council. And that really is a summary of it in terms of the 4 components that are being brought forward to Plan Commission. Plan Commission specifically asked for the Cultural Heritage Board's input, and so it's here before you, and we plan to bring it back to them as soon as possible. Chair?
Right. Yeah, just to tell the board, a couple of members of the Cultural Heritage Board attended the last Planning Commission meeting. It was last Thursday, and I spoke in front of the board, in front of the commission, and so on. And that decision was made to bring it back to the Cultural Heritage Board. This discussion today, and it's late. So they did a continuance, and it's going to be discussed at their next meeting, which would be next
May 9th.
Yeah, May 9th? Yeah, on May 9th there. So, and then it will also, I don't know if it stayed on for city council for the 21st, I think it was, or something. I'm not sure if it's still on.
I believe it's still scheduled at this point for May 21st, unless Plan Commission decides to continue it or something.
Right. And in kind of an agreement that I made, we knew that with the current agenda that there was going to be a meeting tonight, and on the agenda were a couple of structures of merit, and we kind of said that I would put it in abeyance until, it went through Planning Commission and City Council and so on, the procedures, and not discuss it, make a determination tonight.
Okay. So, Vice Chair, I'll call you Chair since you're Chair in the absence of Chair. I think when those items come up, you can take action, their agendas, right, to take action to do what you feel is appropriate as a board. If that's continuance, that's up to you at that point. So, but at this point, we'd like to get through the chair and the members of the board here your input, and bring that back to the Planning Commission.
Oh, I have a question. Can you give me the definition of the structure of merit? Because I believe in the beginning of the board, when I came in on board, I believe, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
I've got her name.
Stephanie.
Stephanie, that I was going to have some training going over what the structure of the Cultural Heritage Board will be like. So I would like to take on what she was saying about getting more thorough, more training, and fully understanding what's the difference between merit and other foundation of different appropriate for a new member, for myself.
Sure. So a structure of merit is a recognition of a resource, whether it's historic, architectural, archaeological, cultural. It's designating something with just a recognition of it being special, for lack of a better word. What comes along with a structure of merit is an increased burden, because it's subject to the same maintenance requirements as landmarks and historical districts.
So are you going by priority of landmark, historic preservation, and structural merit? Is that what we're looking at?
I wouldn't say that there's necessarily a priority. They're all different things. They all have their own requirements to be met. But they all are designed to help the board meet their intentions as designated in the code to preserve historical and cultural resources in the city. If you wanted a further definition of the requirements, I'd have to pull that out of the code.
I think that's the thing. The problem is that the understanding, the layman term, when we talk about. I know the board are frustrated, and I feel frustrated because I don't know what they're saying and what you guys saying. I'm in the middle, and I don't have an interpreter involved in here. So my concern is that I want to have a clear understanding so I can help do my job better and help your job a lot more better to be happy to be here, because there's a lot of tension. And I believe that people like myself who don't have that understanding what we're voting on, and yet they're trying to agree a recommendation, and some of the other color benches kind of offset the decision. So it's normal or it's not normal when I see what's going on before.
So Stephanie, if I may, and we had some conversations after the last Planning Commission to try and address your question. It sounds like there might be two really issues there. One is generally broader training for the entire Cultural Heritage Board. And secondly, as you kind of, I think, characterize it in terms of specifically what's landmark and what's a structure of merit. And if you had to prioritize it, there really isn't a priority. But if you had to prioritize it, a landmark is something much more significant. This gives it a designation.
Okay.
A structure of merit gives it a designation. So there is some impact in terms of additional maintenance requirements because of that. But a landmark is something that's much more, well, if you will, protected. And to do something to that landmark, you will have to go through a much more significant process, particularly as I see from an environmental standpoint as well. But in terms of structure merit, you can still modify your project, but you still have to go through a process as well, but it may not be as significant as what you would have to do in order to modify a landmark situation.
So now I understand that when I was looking at it, the state, the federal, and the local. So what priority did you look at as far as this is considered a landmark on your recommendation?
So a landmark can be a state or a federal landmark, or it could actually be a local landmark as well. But a structure of merit is something we adopt as a locality specific only to the city of Stockton, but to the extent that we describe what maintenance requirements are necessary for that structure of merit, anybody who wants to modify a structure that's been designated as such will have to go through a local process.
And who would be the local practice, here or the planning commission?
Here.
Here, okay. All right, thank you.
So if I can also get back to more globally as well, since it's reconstituted, and I did hear, and I've been hearing over the last few months since the reconstitution of the board, is training something that you folks feel like is additionally needed as part of this conversation here? Because we might have a couple of folks that are been on the board for a while, but other folks that had not had the same or similar level of exposure. And so we're trying to figure that out, how to give you the training in the most global sense, so we know in terms of financial and all that stuff as well, but trying to expose you to that level. One of the things we did do is, and we're willing to do this as well, is individually sit down with you and go through, well, the entire preservation section of the code. Or we can take, more work for Stephanie, take some sessions here and go through the entire preservation section of the code for some education sessions, if you will. And that might be a little bit more helpful so that we're not just, here's the first 3 projects on your second meeting, and we haven't gone through the process yet. So maybe if that's something you're interested as it relates back to how to really review these items, we can do something like that.
I think over the years that there was training that went on. There hasn't been one, of course, in quite a few years now. But I personally think that would be worthwhile to be able to sit down, like the director here, and discuss this. I think that would be very good. Other opinions?
I think the one-on-one meetings would be most helpful, because I think all of us come from different perspectives, and I think that would be the forum to allow for like more of a dialogue where I was an educator, and one-on-one education is by and large going to be more effective than any sort of presentation.
Well, I just think that I'm sure that everyone is more expert at what they do, but I definitely think that for myself, I'll be willing to go on training myself. I won't admit it, but it don't have to be a retired board to join the meeting, but it got to be some people who are new before to be able to train, like the commissioner, the planning commission, those things that I think it should be required to have those type of things.
And I apologize, I don't mean to deviate from the agenda item too much, but I sense that that's actually part of the situation in terms of when we're changing the code. Well, what is that section of the code we're talking about in the first place? So to the extent that maybe we can do some training sessions of the entire preservation section of the code, we'll have to develop a curriculum on that code, because it's not exactly short, it's not exactly long, but it's definitely something we need to summarize and bring it back, and then you'll see how, when you're reviewing projects, what that really means and how you're applying the overall sections of the code to projects.
So the chair, are we going to make it a motion to request by,
No, we can just bring it back to,
Yeah, okay.
so let us set a calendar out for you in terms of additional items that we will need to do, and really as soon as possible.
That sounds great. Yeah, Phil.
I have just some comments and questions about the ordinance, if we can go back to that.
Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, I am happy that some of the less legal aspects of the previous code are being addressed, especially like the appeal and the notice of hearing. I guess my first comment and question regards, I guess it would be the structures of merit B, part 2, notice and hearing required. It says hearing by publication in a newspaper of general circulation in the city. And I guess my concern is that the only newspaper of general circulation in the city is the Record. And I have nothing against the Record. My concern is that the people who live in the areas where the majority of these landmarks and structures of merit applications are going to be based, mostly South Stockton and East Stockton and downtown, a little bit of Midtown. Those areas are populated by people who generally can't afford to read the newspaper. And on top of that, oftentimes the buildings are owned by people who don't live in Stockton and don't read the newspaper. And so I was wondering if that section could potentially be amended, or just add language potentially that could be posted on the city's website and the city's like a social media page. Just because I don't think the vast majority of people, for example, that live in the area near the Mariposa Hotel don't read the newspaper.
So I believe there's a section in there that talks about the property owner being provided a certified mailing of the notice as well.
Yeah.
So the property owner would be notified via certified mail, which is standard practice,
Yeah.
as well as a local circulation. Plus, part of the public noticing is within 300 feet of the
good.
subject property.
Cool. Okay.
So they get a mail copy of the notice as well. And
Oh,
that's
they do.
standard with all of our noticing, so we kept it consistent.
Cool. Just wanted to make sure that, wasn't sure about that.
I'll double check to make sure it's in there, but that's what was supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
And again, it's similar to the processes for all the other commissions. So we do, as you mentioned, if you're not reading the paper, then, right, reading a little classified section,
Yeah.
then you're
Yeah.
also getting a notice. Yeah.
Okay. That was the main question. And then the second question relates to, I guess, what in my opinion is the most vague aspect of the entire structures of merit process. And that's actually in the very first sentence of part A, of section A. Criteria for designation as a structure of merit. The board may designate any structure not designated as a landmark as a structure of merit. Is the reverse also true? Can a structure of merit be at a later date, if determined, designated as a historic landmark?
So I'll let legal correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that it could be upgraded. It's just that if it's a landmark, it can't also be a structure of merit the way the code is written.
That
Correct,
was the
Sharon?
clarification I wanted. If for example, with a building like the Mariposa Hotel, it could, if a group of people that are so interested wanted to make it a historic landmark, I think it more than meets those qualifications. But that's a really lengthy process. That maybe isn't suited for this group, this body. So I just want to make sure that it was something that could be upgraded if so desired at a later point.
I see no restrictions on that in the code.
Cool. Thank you.
David, I had another question. My understanding is that when when a structure is listed as a structure of merit, you had mentioned about a change in the maintenance. And I think there's a change from, I don't know which is Title 8 to Title 16 or vice versa. I know Wes looked at those two titles, and it seemed like there really wasn't much difference in maintenance. between the two? It seemed like maybe there was something to do with like a foundation, but nothing that was visible, to anyone driving by and looking at the property. Could you maybe explain what that maintenance difference is?
Good.
Just give me a moment to pull it up and I can explain that for you.
Okay.
The internet's taking long, sorry.
Oh, here you go.
I don't know why my computer's not loading. So in addition to, oh, here we go. I'm going to leave that open too, though, because they're different. Is that okay if I borrow your screen? So the basic maintenance is more geared towards like nuisance abatements, just general property maintenance, whereas the maintenance in Title 16 under cultural resources is a bit more strict, for lack of a better word, because it does talk about, like you mentioned, the inadequate foundation, floor supports. It talks about internal condition, whereas the other maintenance is strictly external, and then the general grounds. Any kind of fireplace, that bulge, settle, deteriorating exterior plasters, mortar, stucco, broken windows, doors, peeled paint, rotting holes. So whereas the general maintenance would not necessarily go after somebody that has peeling paint, for example, because that does occur. Whereas with the structure of merit, that is something that could potentially be cited, that they're not consistent with the requirements of a structure of merit. I'm not saying that they would get cited off like immediately, but it's something that per the code could be a potential violation if not maintained.
So code enforcement could potentially go out and cite the property owner?
Yes, because it's in the, yes, they enforce the municipal code.
Well, and I'll add this, which sounds onerous. If you're cited for Title 8, just abatement nuisance issues, you're going to be in violation of that. But you're also in violation of Title 16, which is the Development Code. Then you've got another whole section that you've been designated as a structure of merit, and then you're in violation of that too. So it's a process, but it's an important process because all of a sudden there are enforcement requirements subject to my authorities as opposed to just general nuisance as well. So any kind of process for enforcement can take a little bit different path as well. The whole purpose of being designated as structure of merit means you have to conform with those requirements. It doesn't mean you just ignore them. So.
Does anyone else want to make any comments about these proposed changes to the code?
I have a question. It's with, I'm sorry.
No, go. Go ahead.
I was only looking this way, I apologize. With regard to the next planning commission meeting and then and the city council meeting, would the Cultural Heritage Board be able to provide any information or a viewpoint, since or is the only vehicle we have, like it was last week, with just that 3-minute window of comments? Is there any?
You are unfortunately limited to the roles and duties that you're assigned under the code. Now you can obviously speak as individuals, and imagine if you decided as a board, to assign somebody as a representative, you can do that too.
But we'd only have the 3 minutes that would be designated.
I mean, yeah, you have 3 minutes, and if the commission or council wants to give you more time, they would just have to give everybody else more time similarly as well.
I thought that if you request for an agenda item for 10 minutes, is that required? If we want to talk about giving a presentation or a comment, it doesn't have to be a comment, but can you request have them for us to represent the Cultural Heritage Board for like?
You can, but it will be up to the chair of the commission and the chair of council. And again, if they give you 10 minutes, they're going to have to give everybody else 10 minutes.
I see.
Or 7 minutes or 8 minutes, whatever it might be.
Can we, at the culture heritage board, require that if they need to speak to the planning commission, right? For more minutes?
And then city council after that, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I mean, it's up to you from that perspective. I don't think you're allowed to speak as a CHB there, as a board, but if you want to designate somebody to represent all of your interests, making sure it's clear that all your interests are focused into one person, and then that's relayed forward. You can probably do that, and then again ask for the amount of time that the planning commission might grant.
Yeah, I asked that question at the last planning commission meeting, and I never really got an answer. It was mentioned about the 3-minute requirement.
Yeah.
And I understand, but that is for the general public.
Yeah.
And I didn't think as a representative of the Cultural Heritage Board that we're the general public. So, I mean, like, for example, many years ago when there was a big discussion over tearing down like 5 historic downtown hotels, at that time I was the chair of the Cultural Heritage Board, and I went in front of the city council and mayor, and I think I spoke for like 20 minutes or something. You know, it was an extended period of time, and, you know, we were fine with it and so on. I mean, it just doesn't seem like we should be, as a city board, subject to that 3 minutes. But,
If I may.
Yes.
So just generally speaking, when appearing as an individual, even in the capacity as a board member, you are a general member of the public. In the event that the Planning Commission invites the Cultural Heritage Board to make a specific presentation that is agendized, that of course would be presented more like a staff presentation, not as a public comment. Perhaps those were the circumstances. But I would also note that this time would be a good time to relay any information as Planning Commission specifically directed staff to listen to and relay comments from the Cultural Heritage Board. Written communications may also be a successful way to lengthen your discussion.
yeah, we also, when we give out our awards of excellence, a presentation is made to the Planning Commission, and they actually have the final say on it. And, you know, that presentation, depending on the number of nominations, can be a good half hour or something, but that would be different because that would be an agendized item.
Correct.
Okay, does anyone else have any, yes, I'm sorry, yeah, Anthony.
When a property owner submits an application to demolish a building that is over 50 years old, it requires there's like a special report determination for that, correct?
If it's over 50 years old, it's necessary for them to provide us a report to say, to look at its historical status. And staff reviews the report from that standpoint.
Okay, and either can determine it historic and either deny the demolition permit or allow it to continue, correct?
That's correct, or unless it's a building that's about to fall over, then I have authority granted emergency rights under the code to make sure it doesn't fall on anybody and allow it to be demolished.
Okay. How many would you say demolition permits have been denied under that?
How many, I'm sorry, what, demolition permits?
Yes.
I don't know.
He's counting.
I don't know if denial would be the correct term. The response that I would have to an applicant who submits an application to demolish a building is it older than 50 years is the first question. If the answer is yes, I'll say, what information do we have about its historic status? And typically, I get a response which is, how do I get that information? Sometimes those requests go away. They don't come back. So it's not like approval denial, it's more you provide the information if you do. The board has received at least a few notifications of a preliminary determination of the director that an application for a sound structure has been submitted for demolition, and there's a 10-day appeal period for any question to be investigated on that. And additionally, the city does, we do receive emergency demolition requests. Fires happen, foundation, we have a building that's probably going to come in tomorrow. The foundation shifted, or the building shifted 3 feet off its foundation, stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and if someone wants to appeal that, if there's a determination that there's no, because I'm thinking of the ones that we've received via email saying that there's a determination for, I think we've received several since I've been on the board, and that a building does not have any historical value and it's going to proceed. What is the appeal process for that?
You'd submit a form, fee to the city clerk, who would receive that, and that decision would be taken up the chain for consideration.
Who is it appealable to? Like, who makes that decision?
Sorry, I want to say it's Planning Commission. Sorry, I don't recall off the top of my head. Maybe Stephanie could look.
I'm looking. Oh, if it's an appeal of your decision, it goes to Planning Commission.
Which one?
Demolition.
Resources in the demolition section. Put down after final.
Decision of the director may be appealed to commission in compliance with chapter 16.100.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
The
that.
Planning Commission would be the appeal body to receive an appeal.
Basically, it's an appeal of my decision because I've determined it's significant, and they don't like the decision, so they're not appealing the they're appealing the authority of my decision. So that's what's being heard by Planning Commission.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that there was an appeal process for that. I wanted to join this board because I deeply care about Stockton's history, and I'd like to recognize and save it. And it's just a little inconsistent to me that applications for structures of merit that were received back in November have not yet come to our agenda, but that this is being put forth. And I agree with what's being said. I think the public has a right to know what's happening, and they should appeal if there's some undue stress that having their property listed will cause them. It just seems a bit inconsistent that has happened. And obviously, as we know, there's been a lot of disagreement between the board and city staff about what the process is for structures of merit. That's all I wanted to say.
Excuse me, I have a question. I don't want to put the director on the spot, but can you what recommended as far as when you mentioned chain of command of different? Can someone appeal it or from demolition? Because I know I got the email like he said, but I come up with a question that when I call somebody, I think I talked to somebody, I think I talked to you, what I do with this email, and it would. And telling me that it was going to be demolished at Main, at Barton, or somewhere, and it was like 50 years old. It was a commercial building and things like that. How to, but we couldn't say anything out of it. We just got an email, but we couldn't talk about them on the board. We couldn't say anything. Just got that it's going to be a demolition. So, but there's no protocol. How to, like you were saying, how we're kind of like, okay, so we cannot say anything. Just if this is only information item. So how do we, anybody we could object, object or appeal or consideration, okay, if that's the right idea or something like that, we could discuss over it when we get that demolition.
It is appealable.
Yes.
So that is
what I
the
meant.
option available. So
Right.
if that email comes through and there's a disagreement with the decision of the director regarding whether or not it's historical.
Maybe he see something when we heard some other finding that he may not, like he didn't consider it, that, like that. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, the process prescribed in the code is the way it's been done, but the ability to appeal is in there.
Okay.
So if there is a disagreement, a person could appeal it, and that would go to Planning Commission for decision.
So this brings up a good point to my earlier point. I think what we could do, and it might be a little bit longer meeting, but we'll need to go through the entire preservation section of the code with you folks and maybe what we could do is take scenarios or examples of how that's applied and, from a code perspective, and that might give it a little bit better context. So, but these questions are good, right? But what's happening is if we're giving you a number of projects right after you get appointed, and you're not having the ability to know what the code says about it, and I understand that. So that's why I'm suggesting we go through the code, and it might take a little bit of time, but what we'll do is we'll make the meeting a little longer, I guess.
I think what you're saying, I agree, because we're going to be on the board for 4 years, tomorrow 3, so I think it'd be worthwhile to have that education, so to understand what's going on, what our job is supposed to do.
Okay. And we'll try to break it down into components and sections so that it makes sense in how we apply the code.
David, one other question on structures of merit. Over the last few years, when we've had meetings, the Cultural Heritage Board has approved some new structures of merit. It seems like in the change of city staff that all those structures have disappeared or something. There's about, I think, 3 properties. There's 2 I can think of pretty much right away that we did approve, but nothing's ever happened to them.
Like,
They're never on any list here.
Okay.
On the
Do you mean disappeared, like demolished, disappeared?
No. I mean, just there's no record of us, the Cultural Heritage Board, voting for these structures of merit.
Okay, if you can send those addresses to us, I mean, we'll definitely look it up. I mean,
I think at a past meeting, there was a discussion where you and Chairperson Swanson were going to provide past agendas and staff reports. Staff is more than happy to go through those to update records if there's any gaps.
Yeah, I have a feeling when Richard Laraway left, that things, he had a lot of that stuff, and I think it just kind of went out to wherever. So, well, I'll talk to Wes about it and see what we can come up with.
Thank you.
okay, great.
So, Stephanie, on this, in the agenda, it says that this item is for informational purposes. No action is requested. Would you like us to do action as far as like for an approval or something, a motion, or do you think it's not necessary?
Given that it's an informational item, it is not required that a motion be made. I've been taking feedback from the discussion, and we also have this recorded, so staff will review that to make sure that your concerns are passed on to the Planning Commission and identified in the report. So I don't think it's necessary, just because it is an informational item.
I just want to make sure if there's any comments, additional comments you have, that we can make sure we memorialize it.
Looks like we have.
Well, I would say that I think this is so helpful. I know that when you sent out the email, and it said if Wes and I had any comments to make, but I really feel presenting it to the whole board like this was really the way to go. So.
Definitely. It was a courtesy emails to the whole group and then also to you and the chair, just to provide opportunity to sit down.
And that's great. I appreciate it. Yeah.
The only concern I have after reviewing this is that it doesn't disclose anything regarding the process having a time frame. For example, 30 days for structure of merit and versus the process for appeal. The section on appeal, it's only 1 sentence, and it doesn't give much information. It would help if it had a time frame, so at least we have an idea of what that consists of.
Meaning an appeal period? Like how long someone has to make an appeal?
Something in that language. It's just the thought that came up when I was looking at this. It didn't have that, and that would help clarify things a lot on the process.
It actually references another chapter, which is 16.100 appeals. So I think because of that reference, if we go back to that chapter, which I'm going to do right now.
And that's what I was talking about, is similar to other appeal processes. All the appeal processes are 10 days within the action of the board in this case. But regarding your other comment, the 30-day comment, I'm not sure I understand that particular comment. Do you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure about, I don't know where the 30 comes from.
Normally in policies and procedures, when there's something that requires action, there generally is a time frame on any process. And
So
so what would be that?
So you're referencing like processing timelines?
Yes.
So That would be more something for, like you said, procedures, guidelines, bylaws, where you would say that an application needs to be, once submitted, takes X amount of time to be processed. The Subdivision Map Act, for example, in planning, like for maps and whatnot, it's 30 days to provide comments. It's not necessarily 30 days to bring it to the board or the commission. It's simply, you get the application, you have to respond within 30 days to see if it's deemed complete and if you need any additional information.
Okay, so when we get the agenda, in the email, when we get chapter 6.11, did it automatic hit and it'll go pop up and it will go to a reference to it? Because I don't remember hitting anything that linked to it if the references. That's probably why we're having a lot of question about it, because it say chapter 6 and it doesn't really say much.
Okay.
So we could make a decision, say, okay, the board's action and they highlight it and then make the red to amend it and change it to appeal. What does that mean? So I think that's coming like this kind of confusion in that area of stating an appeal, which we can 10 minutes, or we have an appeal, or somebody in the public would like to have an appeal from the cultural heritage and then to complete it to the planning commission and to the director, whatever, like a protocol.
So there, I'm going to answer that in two parts. So if you're looking at the municipal code online, all of the references to other chapters are hyperlinked. So when you click on those, that'll take you to that chapter. So that's the first part of that. A follow-up part to your question is, sounds like you're describing the hierarchy of appeals, and that's actually one of the changes proposed in the red lines before you, where it shows where they would go based on the appeal. And it's table 7-2, Cultural Resource Review Authorities. It's in the proposed ordinance. And you'll see.
Are you talking about number 4, right? I'm looking at.
Yeah, so that's the actual red lines. That's the proposed ordinance. Once that's codified online, any reference will be hyperlinked.
Okay.
Yes, and then when you were talking about like what's the process in terms of where it goes, that's a change that's going to be in the cultural resources chapter, and it's going to show right here. Structures of merit, and then the decision is by the board, and then the appeal goes to commission and then to council.
So it's going to be on our web, it's going to be on the Cultural Heritage website?
The code section for cultural heritage,
Right, okay.
yes.
Okay, cool.
Will that also apply to the amendments? Because I know in section 11 of this page, it talks about an amendment of the code of section 16220.030.
So this is
So
written
there's-
in like red line format, so it's easy to see the changes.
Yeah.
So right here.
Got
So
this.
here's the red light, and the one none change it is the code from 16 right here. There's no lining.
So if there's a strike through, that means it's being proposed to be removed. If it's red and there's no strike through, it means that's being proposed to be added to the language of the code.
Added.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so we won't do a motion or anything, but
If there's any additional questions, comments, you can send them by email. It's a public hearing of planning commission, such as previously discussed. You can speak as citizens or send a representative, same thing at council.
So thank you again, Chair and Board, for your comments, and we'll work on setting up those education sessions.
Thank you.
That would help.
let's see, any no unfinished business, I'm assuming?
Has this been approved?
There-
It's informational.
It's informational.
Okay,
It
sorry.
doesn't have to be approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no unfinished business.
Okay, then we'll move on to new business. We have a certificate of appropriateness for a building in the Magnolia Historic District.
Thank you. Oh, yes, we do. Assistant Planner Stephanie Takagawa will be presenting.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. The project being presented before you tonight is for the consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for the alterations to the front porch of the residence at 945 North Sutter Street, which is within the Magnolia Historic District. The project site is located at the corner of East Acacia Street and North Sutter Street. And this is what's existing there now. This is a single-family home that was constructed in 1910. Unfortunately, staff was unable to find information documenting whether the building was considered a contributing member of the Historic Preservation District. However, due to the age of the home, it appears that it is contributing as it aligns with the Magnolia Historic Preservation District's period of significance, which is from 1860 to 1930s. On the left side is the site plan. It shows a portion of the home, the front porch, that is proposed to be altered, and on the right-hand side, it has a picture of what's the existing porch design and what is being proposed.
Excuse me, can you, what is, you said you changed it? Can you give the red pen or whatever they're saying regarding?
So you can see here, it's a little bit lifted. This is what's existing now, and this is what's being proposed. It's going to be a little bit higher here, and then the stairs are going to be a little bit different as well, with a little bit of a different design.
Is this an example of a structure of merit?
No, this is for a certificate of appropriateness.
Appropriation, okay. All right, thank you.
The certificate's required for them to be able to make the change to the home, since it is an older historic home.
Okay.
So we see here is the elevation of the home, as well as the porch that's being proposed and what it would look like, as well as the southern and northern elevations of the porch. So currently the home is painted a Kelly Moore color called Frost. Not very visible on the screen, but it's kind of like a yellow cream color. And what the applicant is proposing is this old mahogany color that's shown below for the home itself, as well as the porch.
Wait, the building's going to be mahogany?
Yeah.
Is the step already red, or that's the original existing color of the white off that, in the picture, I don't?
Yeah, the cream is what's existing right now, and what they would want to do is this, the old mahogany color.
I see right there, there's a red on the step, they already put that on?
Would you
On the
say that
picture?
it's red or brown? Because sometimes colors are distorted.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's like a crimson, more on the darker side of crimson.
Okay.
And it's just going to be just that one color, the trim is not going to be separately painted, and is this the applicant? Or?
Yes.
That's helpful. So it's the bottom one.
Historic. And what's the trimming going to look like?
And this is the existing color that's marked with the red.
And the trimming?
Trim color hasn't been decided yet. I would go for the frost to be the trim color against the mahogany background. I'm the general contractor that's going to do the work, so.
Okay.
So there is going to be a second color. It's not just all mahogany.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
You can come up to the...
And then if I could ask you a few other questions. The current steps, are they they're wood right now?
They're concrete right now, and that's the red color I think you noticed on that photograph, but they're going to become wood again. I think originally they certainly were wood. But that's, the proposal is to go to a wooden step.
Demolish the concrete and then put in wood. What kind of wood are you going to be using?
The steps themselves, the treads will be redwood, and the riser will be Douglas fir. And they'll be painted.
Okay, and then 2 by whatever, signs?
Actually, they're on that plan. I think they're 2 by 12 treads and 2 by 6 risers.
Okay, so just one piece.
One
in
piece,
other words,
yeah.
I believe staff has additional information in their presentation.
I'm sorry.
Continuing on, so staff has reviewed this project against the citywide design guidelines, specifically the Magnolia Historic District. And it seems that the proposed stairs will be as similar in style as what's existing, as you saw in the other slides. Staff recommends that the Cultural Heritage Board adopt the resolution forwarding an approval recommendation to the director, subject to that the proposed colors would be submitted to the director for review and approval, and that the colors should be of a muted earth tone, consistent with the period of significance for the Magnolia Historic District.
My question is, what color was that district? I mean, were the homes generally a light color
Yes.
painting?
The surrounding neighborhood was more of a cream tone or an earth tone color, which is more on the lighter end.
I have a question to the board. Is it very common for the historic to kind of change its progression of changing the color of the tone of the historical building around the neighborhood?
I think that, yeah, there's been lots of changes in the color over the years on buildings. Sure, it's not that unusual. Part of it has to do with whatever is in style at the time period. I mean, I think when most of these buildings were built, probably the buildings were just all white, and then later on they had the painted ladies craze, and all of a sudden they used multiple very bold colors. So things have changed over the years.
So at the board, are we supposed to look at something that is off, like you said, bold color that is going to stand out, or are you looking at something that in the neighborhood that's kind of blending in with the aesthetic of the neighborhood?
Well, I guess, you know, it's traditionally we haven't really been that concerned about the paint color, because it can always be changed by a future owner. But, you know, we wouldn't want something that would be really garish looking or something, obviously. I don't think if you wanted to paint it bright purple that we'd be or hot pink, that would be a real popular color.
Okay.
I had a couple other questions. One's for staff. Is there a requirement that they put some railing up on these along the steps? Because there isn't a current railing, it looks like.
I'm not too familiar with that, as that may be a building code issue.
Right.
I've seen residents where they raise the side to make kind of like a railing to comply with the building code requirements, but I'm not too familiar with the building code.
Excuse me, but that's exactly what's happened, is the parapets have come up on the risers, and also, you can't really see it with this view, but the two wings, both right and left, go back to the house, and those needed to be elevated to make code too. They're currently only 24 inches tall, so those have been raised up as well. So I don't necessarily think a handrail is going to be necessary because of the height of the parapets coming up.
So it's not much different from what the step toward the porch, right?
It actually will look almost identical, except right now it's severely dilapidated. Yeah. This all came from code violation problems for the homeowner, and you know, finally we've got to this point to try to get it repaired, but it'll look virtually the same. Same siding, same material, same columns. There's really no changes other than those slight elevation changes.
That was a question that I had about the siding as far as...
It's a match.
Because it's like, usually I think it's like a 3-lap siding.
Correct.
And you're able to locate that.
Still available.
Really?
Yeah, Valley Lumber can get their hands on it, so, yeah. 2-tier as well, so if you run across this again, they're the people that can get it.
Do you have a question? Yeah, I mean, just a general comment. I don't think that a certificate of appropriateness would come to us if the proposal did not meet the building code, right? Like, I don't think we need to ask questions about the building code, because I really, like, just more of a question for staff, but you guys, it's their job. They check these things. So
The building permit would be reviewed by plan checkers.
Like it wouldn't come to us if it hadn't have already fit the building code. So.
I believe the building permit would be after this
Oh, really?
step.
Okay.
It's, you know, essentially approve the design, then it goes and approves the actual construction part of it, the building code. You know,
Okay.
am I wrong?
Just briefly, a summary of our referral process. So essentially, when the code enforcement violation comes in to us from the homeowner, we take that in, we tell them, hey, you need to do a certificate of appropriateness to come into compliance. Essentially, they'll submit something like this to us, we'll review it, present it to you guys for approval, and then after they receive approval, they will move on to getting a building permit, and they'll have this approval from the board and the director saying, we've done all these steps to comply with the code, and we're moving on to clearing this code violation. And so once that's complete, they'll get the building permit to construct.
That process also helps to prevent someone pulling a permit and doing changes without the board's knowledge or approval. It ensures that the historical value is preserved.
Yeah, I guess I just brought that up just for expediency because I don't think we, as a collective body, have with maybe the exception of Melanie, have the expertise to ask questions about the building code. So it was out of expediency.
One other question I have is has the property owner owned this property for a fair length of time?
I don't know exactly how long, but I would guess about 20 years.
Because one of the things that I remember back on this property from a long time ago is that enclosure of the wrought iron enclosure or in the front porch happened, and it wasn't done through the appropriate means, i.e. a certificate of appropriateness. So I was asking if it was the same owner because I was curious. I think at the time, the owner, and I was thinking it was a minister or a pastor or something. I recall. I think that they considered it a safety issue, and that's why they enclosed it with wrought iron.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if that was the situation, if it's considered a safety issue, generally we would allow it, but you know, it wouldn't it be our first choice to do it this way? I mean, if they're concerned about break-ins, I mean, I personally, I would rather see a security door than to have the whole, you know, porch enclosed. So
Yeah.
that's why.
No, I'm siding with you on that as well, because once this is done, prior to either reinstalling the wrought iron or possibly a security door taking its place, I think it'll detract from the beauty of what we're going to do.
Right.
I see what you see, and I see that now. There is a bit of a crime problem there, and they have been burglarized, so I think it has its merit for being there, but perhaps the door could suffice as well.
Right.
I can bring that up, because I'd love not to put that back up.
I'd appreciate that because I think it would be a lot more attractive without that,
Yeah.
the iron on it.
I'll run it by them and see what they think, because there's temporarily, I mean, as you come up the stairs, there's a security gate right there, but why not attach one right to the front door?
Right, exactly.
I like that.
Okay, great. Any other comments by the board?
I can make a motion.
That's what I was going to ask for next.
I'll motion 19-5425 to approve.
And I will second the motion.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? Then we'll vote. All in favor, designate by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. Good luck with that discussion on the page.
Yes, time will tell.
Yeah. Oh, here, paint. We have the paint. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is 5.2, and Stephanie, my understanding is we can go ahead with these then?
So I believe based on your conversation with Planning Commission, The board would make the decision whether or not to continue them. That was the recommendation of staff, to continue them as the ordinance process proceeds.
Sorry, Chair. To clarify, I believe the previous discussion was during the informational item that, you had discussed doing the continuance. Stephanie's point was that we would just need to do it at this particular item as it appears on the agenda. So if a continuance were to be made, it would be done now.
Okay. So have a discussion as to whether or not to continue these items, or consider them now, or?
Excuse me, Chair, can you repeat what you were just saying? I didn't quite understand what you're saying.
Well, I asked if, first of all, if we have a discussion whether we should table these, postpone voting on these structures of merit, or if we should have, or if we should do it.
Okay. And what was the staff recommendation?
Staff's recommendation was to continue the items, given the fact that we have the ordinance pending to go through Planning Commission and City Council, to allow the property owners due process, because as the code reads right now, that has not been provided, since it's not required in the code.
Okay.
I would also note that we do not have information for the second property, so to the extent possible, that one would need to be continued just in light of the lack of information.
Is that what you're going to say, Phil?
Yeah, I was going to say that at least for the second property, I never, due to my own lack of time and energy, never submitted it or really edited the draft I have. So I think there's really only one property to look at today, if we do decide to look at it.
Well, and what is the board's feeling as far as continuing both items then? Would you want to do at least the one? Obviously, we're not going to do one of them, but do the other one, or should we just, the changes are made to the code?
I would not mind waiting for changes in the code. I think that's reasonable. If we want to provide the owner, which you folks do have, it was in the application, the due process, I think that's reasonable.
So are we tabling it, yes, or we'll go ahead and proceed? Or
That's what we're discussing.
That's what we're discussing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So do you want to do that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I will motion to table consideration of, I guess in this case, both structures, the 132 East Lafayette Street Mariposa Hotel, and the unnamed, it's actually the Resolve Social Club at 138 East Lafayette Street for the June meeting.
I second it.
Okay. Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Let's see, no citizens here. Any committee liaison comments?
Our last meeting, I mentioned we had our plaque audit going on and we had it mostly completed. It's now been completed.
Oh, super.
The file is 112 megabytes, so it's a huge file. So I printed out one copy, but I don't know if I should somehow get it to city staff to print out, or just to have, and I can send out like a shared link or something. I don't know how we want this to be distributed. I'm trying to remember what the original, besides knowing what plaques there are, I'm trying to remember the original purpose for this and what we want to use it for. Does anyone recall?
So that was, you have photos, or is it just?
Yeah, it's a list of all of the landmarks and address, and if they have a plaque, yes, no, or missing, and then any other notes, and then pictures of each plaque on all the properties.
If I recall, we were kind of evaluating, and I think you were looking into some costs of providing new plaques for ones that were missing, and I suppose this was the first step towards that effort. Is that right?
Identify what's missing, what's out there, and then also the styles.
And the styles, yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I have that report. So I don't know how we want to proceed with that. Is it something that we should discuss amongst a committee first, or what? Because there are a couple that are missing, I will say. So I don't know if we should look into that first, and I know funds are kind of an issue, so I don't know how we want to go about that.
I would see no harm in providing the city with that information.
It might be easier to give us a thumb drive, and we can upload it into our system, and that way we've got at least a digital record of it.
Okay.
This was, what, are you saying that it's violating the Brown Act or whatever? We can't, some of the board cannot see these items that you're finding?
Oh, no, I think he was just saying it's a lot to print.
It's just a lot to print.
It is a lot to print. So do you have the?
There's a lot of pictures and stuff, so I only have one, and I would send the file via email, but the file is too large to send via email.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So, yeah, how can I get, I don't actually have it with me, I should have brought it, but how can I get that too?
You can come by anytime during business hours if you want to bring it in a thumb drive, or if you do have a shared folder where we can download it,
Okay.
we can do that too.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for doing that.
Does anyone want to take this to just see?
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
How many plaques are missing? You know,
I know he found one, I'm trying to remember where. The county courthouse site seems to have been removed. The Medico-Dental building, it's obviously under construction, and so I don't know if it'll be put back, but there is an area where that's missing.
I believe the Henry is either obscured or missing at this point.
Could be behind all the,
Scaffolding, yeah, I didn't want to go over that.
so there are a few, but there are, yeah, there's the county courthouse site.
Yeah, just the monument, but no sign, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I know that one that also is missing, and we've put in 2 or 3 plaques, and they always seem to disappear, are the streetcar barns in California.
Oh, the brick
We had that
building?
Yeah, we've had that both attached to the building, and then we had it up on a super high pole, and it's still, like I said, three just
Right.
disappeared.
Yeah, there's also I forget what it's called, the fire alarm building that's, what direction are we? West
over
of
there,
here?
yeah.
Yeah, that was on the building, and that's removed as well.
Okay.
But most of them are still there. I mean, the vast majority.
Right.
So that was good to see.
Is it really red?
Okay.
We'll take a look at the information, and we can proceed with the board's
Responsibility.
direction.
I think Lourdes took that picture, so maybe she'll remember.
All right. Any other, any additional committee liaison comments?
Oh, I actually do have another one. The awards, that item, because we're on the PR or whatever it is, the thing, I think we need dates for that so we can put out in the public realm what the deadlines are for people to submit applications for that. How's the awards committee coming? Need some time, all right.
Well,
So we need to, I guess we need an application timeline for when we're taking applications, is that correct?
yeah, and we could, I think that we could vote on that, and then we can work, the publications committee could work on an announcement or something to, I don't know, it used to be, I don't know if the city still has, for the awards of excellence, the city in the past contacted all the architectural firms in the city. I don't know if you have that kind of list available.
I do not, but I can ask around, see if there's something that was previously put together.
The county has that.
Oh,
Oh,
I can ask the county.
so should we could vote on it, I guess, as to when we wanted to have that period open for the Award of Excellence. I think generally the application period is like I don't know if it's full 30 days or not. It's, at least 2 weeks, if not longer. I believe the application is on the city website still. It has been, over the years.
Can I make a motion to table this until we have the entirety of the board, or at least a few more members, because right now there's only, I can count 6 of us.
Right.
Chair,
So can we table this to the June meeting?
sorry, Chair, if I may, so no specific motion need to be made as to tabling a particular item. I would ask that if the body were to make a specific vote on an item, that they direct staff to put it on the agenda so it can be formally noticed, so the public can come and participate in your discussion.
Okay.
So to that end, I believe the direction was that it be placed on for a discussion in June.
Okay.
And that's all that's
thank you.
required.
Yeah, that would be great, Stefan, if we could add that on to the agenda in June. Okay. Any other committee liaison comments? Then we have board comments.
I would like to discuss that.
Okay.
Right now, I'm having an opening for anyone who is interested voicing the voice of San Joaquin. It could be teacher or talk about Cultural Heritage Board. My slot is Saturday from 3 to 4, Monday from 3 to 4, Tuesdays from 3 to 4. So anybody who is interested to talk about history or whatever you want to talk about, you're more than welcome. We'll be having a lot of people coming in to talk, so more than welcome to let me know. And that's it. So I would also thank for the staff for their great job, and I know there's a lot of work on them, so I really appreciate your help too. Thank you. Have a great week.
Yes, thank you. I have a comment. It's going back to the appeal process section of the code. On page 10 and even on page 13 of our documents, it states that the appeal chapter code is 16.100, but but on page 6 it says that the code section should be 16.220.100 of the appeal edition of appeal procedure.
So what that's saying is that 16.220 is where you need to add the referencing 16.100. So within a code, instead of repeating the same appeal section over and over and over, you just create an appeal section, and then other chapters that would fall under that just reference it. So what you're seeing is we're saying 16.220 is being changed to include an appeals process, and the appeals process that we'd like to include is referenced in 16.100.
So it's not 16.220.100?
Well, it's stating that the appeals for the structure of merit will follow the appeals as set forth in 16.100. That's what that means.
Okay, because I thought if I need to reference what the appeal code, I thought I would reference 16.220.100, but you're saying it's 16.100?
The process, like the procedure for the appeals, is listed in 16.100. But to identify that the structure of merit has an appeals process has to be in the structure of merit chapter. So it's saying, okay, structure of merit, can be appealed as laid out in 16.100.
Okay.
It's a way to shorten the code, because if you repeat like the exact process for every single type of certificate or designation, it gets very redundant. So it's just a way to keep it a little more organized in a code.
I just want to reference it in case I want to go searching for what 16.100 is. I know.
That's the appeals procedure in Title 16.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one other little comment. At our last meeting, we discussed the Hurley Weston house over there on Harding Avenue and so on, and there was graffiti that was on there and so on. And Wes said he would talk to the owner. I'm pleased to report that the graffiti has been covered up with new white paint on it, and they also. I know this is according to what code enforcement requires, the boarded up windows have also been painted white too, matching, so they blend in a little bit better, but the building at least looks a little bit better than it did when we discussed it at the last meeting.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah, it was very, very good news. It's a beautiful building, so.
Yes, it is.
Any other comments? Secretary comments?
None for tonight, thank you.
I entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been
Aye.
moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you for your time and patience
job,
with
everyone.
us.
Problem?